to take a strong point on this matter.
I call the honourable member Todd McLean.
Speaker, thank you. It's a pleasure to rise and speak in the third reading of the estimates debate. What a long time ago it seems it was since we had that fantastic budget read out in this House by the Honourable Bill English, directed by our extremely hard-working, intelligent Prime Minister, a man of the people he was, and he still is. Mr Speaker, as we have followed this debate over the months and here today, one thing has become clear to almost every New Zealander that's tuned in. That on this side of the House we're focused on the job at hand and what matters. On the opposite side of the House, at least with the main party, the Labour Party and the Green Party, they're close allies. I find it hard to tell them apart, not from a philosophical point of view, but who actually it is the leaders of the opposition, who's the number one opposition party. Because and the reason it's hard to tell is because there's a bit of intermingling of policy here. The things Labour used to be so proud of now the Green Party are spouting as their own policy, and the things that the Green Party used to talk about when they were dishevelled in all sorts of different directions and not sure of their leadership, the direction they should head and what they stood for, what they didn't stand for, well, the Labour Party have adopted all of that, and we see it every week in this chamber and in our media. So, Mr Speaker, what have we delivered as a government in this budget? Responsible managing government finances, building a more competitive and productive economy, delivering better public services, and of course rebuilding Christchurch, and so very important. And I want to touch briefly on each of these. But to my colleague from the Green Party who spoke earlier and is now interjecting from afar, I'm not pointing at Mr Goldsmith. Nobody would ever accuse him of being from the Green Party. What I wanted to say is that we hear from the Greens all the time that the government's ruined the economy. They're saying that we're doing things we didn't tell New Zealanders about. Well, Mr Speaker, last year in November, there was an election. Every New Zealander who was eligible to vote had an opportunity to vote. Over the course of the 3 years that we were in our first government, and during 2011, we made a case to New Zealand on a number of issues to achieve what's in this budget. Responsible management of government finances, building a more competitive and productive economy, delivering better public services, and of course, towards the end, rebuilding Christchurch. But the Greens have said that's not the case, that we didn't make that case to New Zealanders, that we've pointed New Zealanders in a different direction. But I can say, Mr Speaker, in my electorate in Rotorua, where I was re-elected, and many other electorates around the country, Green Party activists, sanctioned by the Green Party leadership or not, we're not sure, got out in their cars, electric cars, or on their push bikes because they care about the environment, and got big hoardings and stickers and stuck them all over our signs and defaced them. They defaced them all over the country, and what they were doing when they were doing that was saying to New Zealanders, if you vote for these people, this is what they're going to do. So, Mr Speaker, what I say to the Green Party is you can campaign as hard as you want in elections. You can have your activists, sanctioned or otherwise, we're not quite sure, go and deface all of our hoardings, vandalise our property, telling people what will happen if they vote for us, but then when we're re-elected, you can't turn around and say, well, people didn't know and nobody knew about this and, you know, you've misled New Zealanders. We haven't. We're focused on the job at hand. We told New Zealanders what we would do. New Zealanders accepted that, and they voted for us, the largest vote any party has received under MMP ever. Under MMP ever. I also, before I get into the detail of this, want to say to some of our friends in New Zealand first that we too share your concerns around seniors in New Zealand. And I commend you for the work that you do in this area. I'm very proud over the first 3 years we were in government to be able to stand here and say that we increased superannuation payments to people on the super in New Zealand in pretty tough times. It was a very difficult time for New Zealand, for our economy, and certainly great pressure on the government books. But what I do want to say is we did that. I'm proud to be able to say that we increased support for senior New Zealanders, and I hope as our economy improves and the government books get into better shape with other parties in the House, we can find ways to do much more for our seniors. We owe them a lot. Now, Mr Speaker, responsibly managing government finances, what does this mean? It doesn't mean spending more money on hopeless projects that Greens and Labour are forever talking about in this House and in the media. Spend, 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 borrow, 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 put off the pain until the future. That's what we're hearing from the Green Labour coalition. I'm going to call it the Green Labour coalition from now on. It's no longer a Labour-Green coalition. It's a Green Labour coalition of opposition parties. So we've said we're going to work as hard as we can to get back to surplus, government books back to surplus by 2014-2015. And it's going to take a lot of discipline, Mr Speaker. It's not going to be easy because we're a trading nation, and we know that many of the countries we trade with themselves have gone through difficult issues with their economies. One needs only cast one's eye across the seas to Europe to see the great difficulties that they have over there. And thank goodness we're not Greece. Our freshly shaven friend on the other side, back from Europe. I'm waiting for his speech to tell us about all the doom and gloom he saw over there. Some of the countries I saw not Goliath, but one of the Davids on the other side of the House visited, one or two of the countries have quite some problems with economic policy. I'm sure that he and Labour will adopt those soon. Not Greece, I'm not going that far, but certainly some of the other countries he went to. But getting back to surplus by 2014-15 is important for us. It's important, and the way that we'll do this, Mr Speaker, is by focusing on what we spend taxpayers' resources, taxpayers' money on, not being frivolous, making sure there is a return for that taxpayer, better health care for the money that's being spent, and making sure that in our borrowing it's reducing, that we're focused on the job at hand, the job that New Zealanders have elected us, given us a second term to do. Budget 2012 forecast economic growth to average 3% a year over the next 4 years, 154,000 jobs to be created, on top of the 60,000 new jobs that are created over the last 3 years of an extremely difficult time with our economy, the global financial crisis of the world. We've increased annual spending on science and innovation, a very important part of our economy, by $385 million, as opposed to the hollow promises we hear from members opposite on a regular occasion. That means that by 2015-16, under this national-led government, spending on science and innovation will have increased to $1.3 billion a year. $1.3 billion a year, not just been thrown around, as the last government did with some of their harebrained schemes, but focused specifically on things that are important for our economy, on areas of the economy where we have an advantage, where we must do much more in science, and where in years to come great dividends will be paid to this country through this new innovation. You see, Mr Speaker, New Zealanders are innovative if you get out of their lives, leave them alone and allow them to get on. And what's a shame that in 9 years of a Labour government that they spent all their time trying to get into their lives, trying to be in the house with them. Do you remember trying to be in the bathroom on the side of the bedroom? How much hot water they should have. Well, those were policies of the past. They're policies we're certainly glad are gone. And again, reminding members opposite, as List MPs, they may not want to remember, but there was an election in November of last year. New Zealanders had their opportunity to cast their vote, to have their say, and we got a larger vote than any party ever had before under MMP. That gives me, under almost any system, our Chief Whip says to me. I haven't checked that, but he's an intelligent man, and I accept fully what he would say in that. So what I want to say is delivering better public services. Well, that's in health, in education and in policing. And I'm going to touch briefly on health for a moment. Tony Ryle is an outstanding Minister of Health. On Friday of this week, I have the great pleasure of going along and visiting the Lakes DHB in Rotorua, a DHB I visited on many occasions, and standing there and presenting them with a certificate of gratitude on behalf of my community for the fantastic work they've done in all areas, but particularly around elective surgeries over the last couple of years. So what Tony Ryle has said, Mr Speaker, is important to him and to this government, is not letters to people telling them they have to go back to their GP in the back of a waiting list before they can be treated. He said it's important that we back doctors and nurses to treat these people, and he's done an outstanding job. We've delivered more money in that area. I'm going to touch on policing because it's very, very important, and I have a bill before this Parliament that's halfway through its first reading at the moment that we'll get to focus on in a week or two's time, which focuses purely on law and order, about holding to account those that seek to harm others, to intimidate others, giving our community some powers to take back those parts of the communities they think are important to them, but to give extra power and authority to our police to get amongst people. No, I'm not talking about the Labour caucus. I'm talking about others who cause great grief and harm in our community. But putting aside some of the things that have been in the newspaper of late, what I would say, Mr Speaker, is I hope the House can come together and have an adult and reasonable and sensible debate on this. And this was a fantastic budget that I commend to the House. Thank you.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, one of the best things about having spent a couple of weeks